Emotions feel like they're talked about in lose-lose situations. That woman is so emotional. That man doesn't have any emotions. He must be a psychopath. My kid just had the most terrible emotional tantrum. We categorize emotions as good or bad, positive or negative, whereas in reality, they're morally neutral. I'm Laura Nicola. I'm your faithful therapist, and thank you for joining me. I'm going to be debunking 3 emotional myths and as they relate to the Catholic Church. So thanks for being here. So let's talk about emotions. A lot of people categorize emotions as either good or bad. You know, we experience something like anger, and that must be bad. We experience something like joy, and that must be good. But categorizing them as such is kind of confusing because all emotions are valid, all emotions are acceptable, and all emotions are meant to be felt. So, emotions are either good or bad. This is just false. The Catechism of the Catholic Church even tells us so. So in the Catechism, they call emotions passions, but here's what they say about them. I'm going to read it word for word. So the Catechism says the passions are natural components of the human psyche. They form the passageway and ensure the connection between the life of the senses and the life of the mind. Our Lord called man's heart the source from which the passions spring. Isn't that beautiful? Emotions are natural. Again, we categorize them as, good or bad, but they're not. They're just natural feelings that we're meant to feel. It goes on to say, that was 1764. This is 1767 in case you want a reference. 1767 says, in themselves, passions are neither good nor evil. They are morally qualified only to the extent that they effectively engage reason and will. Passions are said to be voluntary, either because they are commanded by the will or because the will does not place obstacles in their way. It belongs to the perfection of the moral or human good that the passions be governed by reason. This one's a little bit challenging just because it makes it sound like emotions are a choice. And oftentimes, when I work with people in counseling, it's like, oh, I didn't choose my emotion, right? Like, I don't choose to be depressed, or I don't choose to be anxious, or I don't choose to be, upset or angry or something like that, because again, we categorize those emotions as negative. But this is saying that the passions are governed by reason and will, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But it's just encouraging that, again, emotions are not good or bad. They're not positive or negative. My second little myth here is that if I repress my emotions, they will go away. No, not quite, right? Because if we avoid them, or we deny them, or we hide from them, usually they come back worse. I often describe in therapy how emotional health is kind of like a Coke bottle, right? Like if you shake it up before opening it, that's our emotional health. And if we unscrew the lid really fast, our emotions just explode. They just pop right out of there. Whereas in therapy and having emotional outlets, what we do is we turn the bottle ever slightly and then we close it. And then we turn it slightly and we close it. And what that does is it allows a release of our emotions a little bit at a time, so it's not just exploding when we don't want it to. So we have to have outlets for our emotions, because if we don't, that's when our problems come out. For example, a person who struggles with depression might be internalizing their emotions, so they might be repressing them. A person with anxiety who feels out of control with their emotions might be kind of avoiding what they need to situationally, but that might lead to panic attacks. Or a person who, has an addiction that's kind of slave to that behavior might have urges that lead them to feeling the emotions that they don't want to. Or a person that struggles with scrupulosity might over-exaggerate their emotions, which they might then connect to a morality of the emotion, which leads them to, further compulsions. So you see where I'm going, right? We need outlets for our emotions. They're meant to be felt. It sounds so silly to say, we have to feel our feels. That sounds very new agey, but it's true. We have to feel our feels. We have to feel our emotions. We have to accept them, again, as neither good nor bad, because if we repress them, if we avoid them, if we deny them, they're going to come back harder to manage, in my opinion. So the final myth here that I'm going to lay out is that if I show emotion, I am weak. False. Oh, this is so false, and it just drives me nuts that people think this. I honestly hear this a lot from older generations, and I think it's a culture aspect of previous generations. That you shut down emotion, you don't allow anybody in. You really have to kind of keep your stuff together in order to, kind of be respected or valued or, just seem like you're strong. It's so false. So, it's not a generation's fault. It's just knowing that we have to approach our emotions differently, because there's going to be so much more relief if we actually show our emotions. There's a lot of research that's done by Brené Brown. You've probably all heard of her. She does research on vulnerability and shows that people that actually show their emotions or kind of show their weaknesses or, are able to kind of let their walls down and connect with people like based on their mistakes are actually more likable than people that aren't vulnerable, which is just fascinating, right? So, it's just like another kind of reason to be humble and be able to show people that we aren't perfect, and we're probably going to be more liked for it, which is, again, just fascinating. So look into Brené Brown's research. So let's just take these into consideration, right? If I'm going to identify that emotions are neither good nor bad, I'm not going to work on repressing them. I'm going to work on actually showing them, and I'm going to show them knowing that I'm not weak and that has nothing to do on my, with my personhood, then we're going to feel so much better. And this is very, very similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is basically like we address our cognitions, our thoughts, and we address our behaviors or actions kind of before and after having an emotion. Because our thoughts are usually the ones that are negative, that lead to feeling maybe something that we don't want to feel, but that doesn't mean the emotion is bad. So for example, if I say, I am unlovable, that's a thought that maybe makes me feel depressed or down or anxious or whatever. But that feeling might then lead to a behavior of, okay, I isolate. I don't reach out to my friends. I don't think I'm wanted. I don't think that I am worthy of being in a relationship. So I isolate. So CBT targets the thoughts, like how can we kind of rewrite these thoughts to make them more positive, which is going to have an impact on the feeling. So hopefully the reduction of the feeling of, again, depressed or anxious or lonely can be transformed once we target the thoughts or once we target the behaviors. So if I say, you know what, I'm going to fight against this thought, I'm going to reach out to, 3 friends of mine via text, and I'm just going to put myself out there. And then if we have positive reinforcement from that, if I actually do hang out with my friends and we have a good time, and I can be like, oh, that's right, I don't think that thought that I'm unlovable is true. So again, my whole point with kind of briefly touching on CBT is saying that our emotions themselves are not good nor bad. It's the thoughts or the actions that we have to target in order to kind of transform that feeling. So I hope that makes sense. I'll probably do a whole nother video on CBT. I'm also going to do a whole nother video on mindfulness, which is just becoming aware of how we feel. I think that will be a really good learning opportunity. So let me know what you think about these 3 myths. Let me know if you've heard them before, what you think about them, if you've fallen into them. I have definitely. You probably see it even in my video. I say emotions like anger, and it's so hard not to be like, oh, that's a negative feeling. A couple times even I catch myself wanting to say that because it just sounds so negative. So it's hard, I'll be the first one to admit that it's really hard, but that's okay. It's all a learning opportunity. So let me know what you think. Leave comments. Please subscribe for more videos. I try to put them out on Saturdays. Also follow me on my other platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and let me know what you want to see in other videos. And I just thank you for being here. So, as always, many blessings and happy Saturday.